Okay, I want to start off by giving all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashim, Rakah, Kwadash. Double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who teacheth the Bible in 100% truth. And shalom to the hopeful elect of the 12 tribes of Israel, especially the 144,000, who consist of the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans in the land of the Americas, as well as the speckled bird, the Israelite foreigners living amongst the other nations. Shalom to you. So, today I'm looking at reincarnation. The topic of reincarnation is pretty much for people that, some of these, I'm trying to obviously bring it to the attention of people that may be new to this understanding of what we call the truth, what is actually the truth. You can go around the world, and there's many different religions, many different ideologies of life and philosophies and so on and so forth. But the truth can be found within the Bible. You just have to find somebody who's able to translate it, or break it down, what the scriptures mean. So reincarnation is a biblical concept. This is Exodus 20 and 5 says, I can start at verse 1. It says, and the Most High spake all these words, saying, it says, I am Yahweh, thy power, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt. It says, out of the house of bondage. It says, thou shalt have no other gods before me. It says, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above. It says, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water, or water under the earth. It says, thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, Yahweh, thy power, am a jealous power. And it says, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. So, you, for example, you live in this world and you see people, they maybe they commit various crimes, and then they end up living a whole life. You get might have somebody who's rich and he's committed various crimes, and then he's got away with it his whole life, and then he's died, and then people have found out about what he's done. So then you think, well, he didn't really get punished. A good example, just off the top of my head, if you've heard of the person called Gary, what's his name, Jimmy Savile from the UK. He was like a TV presenter in the 60s or 70s, and he was messing with when I say children, the word children, obviously teenagers, more like young teenagers. But he was famous. He had money. He lived this so-called glamorous lifestyle, but he got away with it because he got away with all these things that he was doing in the background. People knew at the time, but nobody brought it out. And it's only when he had passed away, then the information comes out. Well, then you may say, well, that's not fair because he's managed to get away with this particular crime. But the Most High visits the iniquity of the fathers, this is upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. It says, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. So, you're reborn pretty much through your father's bloodline. I'm not going to pull out all the scriptures. And so, like any, like you, how can I explain it? You may live a life now, you're worshipping idols, false god. You go through your whole life, and then you pass away. You then appear in the spirit world in front of the Most High, and the Most High, He might ask you, who was that God that you was calling on? And now you obviously realize, okay, you get to the spirit world, you know the truth. Everybody that gets to the spirit world automatically knows that there is a Most High, and they know what the truth is. They understand. what's happening on the world. So you then come back, third or fourth generation, through your father's bloodline. So that, that physical aspect is your DNA, which carries forward through your father's bloodline, and then that would create the way that you look physically. Your father could be taking wives of different that look in different ways. So that would obviously, but again, that's all manipulated by the Most High for children to be produced and look the way that they do. But you have your own spirit on top of that, and your spirit is then put back into a new body every third or fourth generation through your father's bloodline. So you then you have the aspect of people. You can you look around the world, you might see, for example, people that are born, and then while they're still classed as innocent, something horrific happens to them. They may even die. Sometimes you have like a 2-week-old baby, a young child, and they get killed. You say, well, oh, the child was innocent. People in this world, they like to say, well, the child was innocent. Yeah, well, in its previous life, that child could have committed some sort of crime, which the Most High is judging them for now. We don't know what it is, but that is the long and short of it. In this world today, for example, that we live in, it's hard to understand that. We live in a Western society. So in Western society, these types of things, you live in the West, and things are based around, for example, science and logic and democracy and opinions. So then you think, in amongst all that, things like spirituality can get lost. But at the same time, in the West, they do promote spirituality, but they promote a barrage of it, and it becomes confusion. That's what Babylon is. So we live in a Western society where you say to somebody about, even today you talk about the Bible, a lot of people will rubbish you off and say you're just reading some book that's written by somebody, or you're believing in things that are never going to happen. You try and explain to somebody about the spirit world or the heavens above, or even reincarnation, and it doesn't quite click in their brain, and it's pretty much because of the way society has taught them to be. And so throughout their growing up, they've developed a certain mind frame. When you go back to the East, which is technically, you're a Hebrew Israelite, you're from the East, you have a more East, you're supposed to have a more Eastern mindset. Don't forget, you've been taken out of your land, removed, taken to far away to live under the enemy and to speak his language, and that's what you're doing. You live according to his customs, and you go to him for the want of all needs. So that's where you've been assimilated into these different nations. So you go back to the East, you talk about things maybe like reincarnation, or even the fact that you talk about there being a god. You go back to the East, well, look how many gods there are. There's like, you can go to Elam, to India, they've got, all these different gods that they believe in. You've got Hindu, you've got the Chinese, they have their gods. You have, obviously Muslim people. So this is all going back towards the East. When you go back to the West, you've got Christianity, Roman Catholic, and a lot of people don't even believe in that anymore. So then, what is left? It's logic, science, reasoning, headlines, and all this type of thing. Politics, that's what's really running the Western world. So you fall into that mindset, and it's so far set away from what you're actually supposed to, how your mind is supposed to be. I'm not saying when you go to these other nations, they have the answer. But when you go to certain nations in the East, that their understanding of how life works is a lot closer to what it should be. And then what you get in the West. This is Genesis 15. This is the Most High talking to Abraham. And it says, and he said unto Abraham, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in the land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years, and also that nation whom they shall serve I will judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance. So that's talking about us, going into captivity, a stranger going into the land that is not ours, and shall serve them, which we have done. And afterwards they shall come out with great substance. It says, and thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. It says, thou shalt be buried in a good old age. It says, but in the fourth generation they shall come hither again. It says, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. Now, to make it easier, because I looked it up sometimes they explain it better than how you can yourself. Genesis 15 and chapter 15, verse 15 and 16 describes the Most High reassuring Abram, or later Abraham, that his descendants will inherit the land of Canaan. It says, but only after 4 generations, because the sins of the inhabitants, Amorites, are not yet full. It says, revealing the Most High's patience and justice, setting the stage for Israel's future exodus from Egypt and eventual conquest of the land as promised in the covenant. So the fact that you jump down here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. The Most High gives wicked inhabitants time to repent, but their escalating sin will eventually warrant judgment, justifying their displacement by Israel. So the Most High is actually fair. You see all these judgments, and you say, well, why is he doing this and why is he doing that? Well, he'll put nations or people in a situation where you commit something to then give the reason to judge you. And so it says that the Most High gives the wicked inhabitants time to repent, and that is through the fourth generation, and that's the cycle. Keep coming back on earth every third or fourth generation. And so, if you've got you got these people today that they say, oh, what's slavery got to do with us? You're blaming our people for slavery and we got nothing to do with what they did. But you have, your whole people went through it. So you had a generation of people that had slaves, and then another generation that had slaves, and then another generation that had slaves, and then a fourth generation that had slaves. So by the time you've gone past that whole generation of Edomites can be blamed for putting the children of Israel into captivity, because you've all done it, third or fourth generation. So everybody in your nation comes under that spirit. So it's the same thing for the nations as it is for Israel. So then I started looking up little things about reincarnation. This is a football player who's retired now. I think he's retired anyway. Mesut Ozil. And he's so-called Turkish. I think it's like Turkish parents or something, but he had German nationality, so he's played for Germany, all that type of nonsense. And he was born in October 1988. So Enzo Ferrari. Yes, Enzo Ferrari. Let me just double check this. Yeah, Enzo Ferrari died August 1988. So for August, September, October, 2 months later. Now I can't prove that that's the same person, but you take a look, and it could be the same person. Now, obviously, like I mentioned a minute ago, you've got your DNA, you've got your spirit. There's two parts to you. You've got your physical flesh, which is the way you look, the weight you carry, how tall, how short you are, skin tone, and then you have obviously your spirit. But at the same time that the Most High sends down, He's in charge of our spirits. He's divided us into 18 nations of spirits, and sent us forth with particular jobs to do on earth. He can also manipulate the way you look by obviously, He makes certain people come together to have particular children, to make children look a certain way. So, for me, the reason why I'm going into this is why I like going into this particular topic is because of my own situation. So I've said it before. I've been shown myself in a past life, but I've been shown by a spirit. A spirit came and then she kind of pretty much told me this is you, but and this is who you were in the previous life. So it's not something that I've had to guess or something I've had to work out. I didn't really have any. I had no idea that was actually a possibility or that was something to consider until this particular spirit came himself and showed me that this is what it is. So then that's a gift. That's a gift that no one can give you. When you kind of consider that, from that point onwards, I'm now able to go into Google and search myself and see what people say about me, and then you get to, and then you have people of they go into all the aspects. I've even seen people trying to break down my personality from what's known about me in a previous life 2,000 years ago. So, and they're right. I've sat there and watched people analyze writings from 2,000 years ago based around myself, and then they describe the personality of that person, and it's the same personality that I have. So that's how I know that the person has done a good job to analyze that person's personality. I heard one of them say that he's not the type of person that would hang around. So he'll get into a quick conversation with you, and as soon as there's a disagreement, he's not hanging about. He said, "Well, we disagree, then cool, we're going to go different ways," and that's exactly what I would do, just to keep it short and sweet. But so yeah, you have these people. You can sit there and think about it. It's a conversation that you can't really prove. Reincarnation. We can talk about it. We can look at pictures like this. Another one is Donald Trump, Caesar Nero. Now we teach that the generation that was with Yahushua at the time is the same generation that's here today. And in that generation, you had Caesar Nero. And, towards the end, you had, the, obviously, while the apostles were doing the work of Yahushua, Nero was in charge for a certain period, and he's obviously commissioned, but in Apostle Peter and Apostle Paul to death. So that same generation is here today, and that's what we keep warning you. We're warning you that Yahushua is on his way back. It's very close. All these things are happening. Jacob's trouble, World War III. It's time to wake up. But yeah, Donald Trump. Back on the subject of reincarnation, Donald Trump. He's the reincarnation of Nero, and again, the pictures. You can kind of look at the pictures. You see, this is the thing. You can believe. You can believe this stuff, or you cannot believe it. And the thing is, you can't actually prove it and show a certificate to somebody to say, yeah, this is definitely the person. But obviously, again, when you break down the personality of Nero, when you go into it, you read about it, you go into the personality of Donald Trump, it matches. In terms of prophecy, it's perfect timing because, when Nero was here as Nero, he declared himself the chief enemy to the Most High, the chief enemy to the children, the sons of Israel, and their Most High. So that same guy is back today, and he's the one that's implementing this ice, which is ultimately chasing down Israelites. So this is the beginning of Jacob's trouble. But like I say, you can guess these things and you can work it out. The Spirit can guide you. You can show other people, then they have the Spirit, and then they see it. Some people don't have the Spirit, so they don't see it. But in my case, I can take it quite far because I can, like I say, I can spend hours and hours reading, based on the things that I did, the acts that I did 2,000 years ago, and so that, like I said, that alone is a gift. You think when you consider, you say, well, that's not a gift anyone can give you. It's it's another level. It's a higher power. It's a gift from a higher power. This is famous past life claims. Um, and again, when I've looked at pictures, you got these images that they make, these fresco images. I've looked at them. I mean, yeah, sometimes they do bear a resemblance. But again, you see, this is the thing. I've obviously I've gone through, through captivity within the last 2,000 years. My family's ended up coming out of India, and I'm in UK. So then I have that look to me. So you look at my hair, you'd say, well, that's Asian, Indian hair. But then obviously people look at me. If I cut my hair short, people say, well, you look like mixed or something, and this is what it is. So you kind of think to yourself, well, it's all a mix. Who knows? Who knows all that time what I was going to look like now? But I believe somehow the Most High will still make you look like the way you looked back then. Maybe a slightly different skin tone, different shade. But you're gonna have the same features, so you can kind of look at the person and recognize it. And again, like I say, I'm not doing it from I think or I believe. I'm doing it from what I know. There's no way I would have thought who I was in the past. Never had this conversation, never got into it, never thought that it was a possible thing. But to be told by a higher power, this is who you are. You eat. It just opens up a whole new world. Uh, yeah, and again, you can go into your actions. So your actions. Donald Trump thinks he's doing what he wants to do. He thinks he's making big bad decisions, and whoever's giving him a memo, they think that but no, I'm really controlling him. But the Most High's controlling everybody, and you've got your own spirit, which is in your body, attached to your DNA. But then the Most High sends other spirits to get into your mind to control the kings, and so on and so forth. So again, you think, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, but the Most High makes you do what He wants you to do. But yeah, getting back to this article, famous past life claims. This is a common stereotype concerning reincarnation is that people who claim to have lived before also claim to have been famous. Well, I can say that same sort of thing. It says this is by no means always the case. However, it is true that fan fantastical claims of lives as kings and queens, legendary heroes, great artists, and other historical notables do abound. This is most likely inspired by whimsy, a desire to impress, or even mental health issues. So, straight away, this is the West. You're living in the West. You live in the Western world. And they just rubbish it off. Oh, we sent you to the doctor and we got a thing. It's called whimsy or mental health, and a desire to impress. But anyway, but yeah, reincarnation researchers agree that the investigation of any such claims require particular rigor and attach little significance to the overwhelming majority, although a very small number of cases have been shown to be strong. Um, I'm not going to go into all and read all of this. Logic dictates that the prevalence of famous past life claims should roughly match the historical prevalence of famous or prominent people in the general population. This is to say, they should be rare, and the more renowned the figure, the more infrequent the incidents. Anyway, I'm not going to go into all that, but they've got some examples here. Yeah, possibly the first person on record to have claimed this FPL, what they're calling it FPL, famous person, famous past life, was Greek philosopher Pythagoras, circa 570 to 495 BCE. It says, who according to Ovid said he had been the Trojan warrior Euphor- Euphorbus in the Trojan War, providing a single verification. It says, I recognize the shield I used to carry on my left arm recently in the temple of Juno at Argos, the city of Abas. This is the Roman Emperor Caracalla, 188 to 217, was said to have been obsessed with Alexander the Great, claiming that when he acquired the surname Augustus, Alexander came into his body so as to live a longer life than he had in his original incarnation. This is a claim more akin to possession than reincarnation. This is another Roman emperor, Julian the Apostate, 331 to 363, this is who attempted to convert Rome from Christianity. No, it's going back. Who attempted to convert Rome from Christianity back to its traditional pagan beliefs. Was accused by the Christian historian of claiming to be reincarnation of Alexander, but there is some doubt that he actually did. This is the 17th century philosopher John Locke wrote that he knew of a man who claimed to have soul of an ancient Greek philosopher Socrates, adding that in the post he filled, which was no inconsiderable one, he passed for a very rational man. So you get various people will make these claims. Tucker. There was a few that I read earlier that I just want to try and find. So this is Barbro Karlen and Anne Frank. It says Barbro Karlen is a Swedish writer who claims to have been the renowned adolescent diarist and Holocaust victim Anne Frank. It says by her own account, she had nightmares as far back as she can remember of men and dogs coming after her, kicking down the door of her small room. Age 2, she told her mother her name was not Barbro but Anne, and she wanted to be with her real parents. So this kind of this is what I mean about the West. They rubbish it off straight away, and they say, oh, it's like a mental health thing. These people are claiming to be famous people. But you can't claim to be someone who's not famous. If I say, oh, I'm the reincarnation of John who lived in Scotland. Oh, who's John? He just worked in the greengrocer. So what's there to remember? I do know people that have told me that they remember. They have dreams or memories. Feel like they have memories of like where they lived with someone, or they've had this past life, or they did this or that. But it's kind of vague. But here, in this situation here, you've got this Barbro Karlen, Swedish writer, claims. So as an adult, if you're a writer, you should be an adult. Claims to have been the renowned adolescent diarist and Holocaust victim Anne Frank. So that's a claim. But then, age 2. She's told her mother. So at the age of 2, she's not going to start making up this lie at the age of 2. Age 2, she told her mother her name was not Barbro but Anne, and she wanted to be with her real parents. It's like her claimed previous incarnation, she was a child prodigy writer. So when she was Anne Frank was a child prodigy writer, and so was this girl, this Barbro Karlen, who ended up being a writer. Since her first book of poetry and essays was published when she was 12 and remains popular in Sweden. Since by the time she was 16, she had published 11 books. During a visit to Amsterdam at the age of 10, she was able to lead her parents to the house where Anne Frank lived, and noticed accurately that the stairs had been changed and the pictures that should be on the wall in Anne's former room were missing. She had no plans to reveal her FPL until she became the object of a vendetta by co-workers and realized that it was a continuing pattern from her life as Anne. It says, and that she remembered in the first place, so as to understand and overcome the pattern of being persecuted. It says, by Karlen's account, she was introduced to the actor Buddy Elias, Anne Frank's last living relative, by a publisher who told neither of them that they were about to meet, and they recognized each other immediately. He supported her claim despite harsh criticism, and the two remained close. So that's a deep story. That's just not one deep. That's two deep. And this Barblo Karen, has to be this Anne Frank. I mean, too many things. How can you go into the house and then recognize that certain, the stairs have been changed and the photo on the wall's missing? She was, a writer when she was young. So was Anne Frank. When she was 2 years old, she's telling her mum, "Don't call me Barbara, call me Anne." So, this is a perfect example. You go back to what I was showing earlier. You see, you got to remember this. So, third or fourth generation. So, it doesn't take. You got people that pass away and they say, "Oh, my great granddad, he passed away 15 years ago. He's still up in heaven, and he's watching me." Well, probably not, because people come back. As you can see, August. Enzo Ferrari. If that is the same person, we don't know. But died August '88, born October '88. So you're gonna come back. And if the Most High puts the spirit, see, it's all down to the spirits. You've got your spirit back in your body. See, this story is kind of perfect because what it does, it kind of highlights all the different aspects. First of all, she's, I don't know what the person looks like, so the personality aspect of it, she wanted to be a writer just like Anne Frank was. When she was 2 years old, she could remember that her name should be Anne. So don't call me Barbara, call me Anne. And she remembers certain things in the house, and then she doesn't know it. So hang on, let me just repeat what it says here. Frank lived. So this is the bit. She had no plans to reveal her FPL, her famous past life, until she became the object of a vendetta by co-workers and realized that it was a continuing pattern from her past life as Anne. So this is what happened to me last year. I was a victim of a vendetta by co-workers. I spent a year suspended from work, but managed to get them to pay me while this investigation was carrying on. It got to the point where I just found another job and I left. But throughout that process, I was experiencing this situation. Halfway through that process, that's when the Most High sent the Spirit, the angel, came, showed me, this is you. And then you realize, that's the same. So the same vendetta that I'm dealing with now, it's the same vendetta 2,000 years ago. And then you start realizing, no wonder people get upset every time I got something to say. This is what it is. So you can't, man's goings are of the Lord. You can't control it. You got no say in how you're going to behave. Your personality is the same way. The Most High can tone you up, tone you down. Don't forget that, the sons of Israel are going to get turned up. Come the day of the Lord, all that kind of stuff. So, obviously, like if you think of someone like Hitler, the Most High's not going to maybe put him back in the same spirit with the same power. You come back as the same spirit, but he might not put him in a situation where he can get himself hold of in charge of a country again. So you don't do that. We don't need that again from you. But you don't know. You don't know where. You'd have to look into it, and so on and so forth. Sometimes people don't have children. So what happens there? You have to speak to the Most High. I couldn't tell you. But reincarnation is definitely real. The way you look, the way you behave, the things you're good at. I mean, in the previous one here, we were looking at, you got Enzo Ferrari. He's obviously, it's about race driving. And then you've got Mesut Ozil, who's about playing football. But it's still, they're still considered sport. You've got to use a lot of skill, quick reactions. You're using your body, so you're still a sportsman to a certain degree. And again, if you're a prophet in a previous life, then you'll come back, as the scriptures tell you. The spirit of the prophets is subject unto the prophets. 18 photos of celebrities and our ancestors that can make you believe in reincarnation. This is back to the West, just make just make a joke of it. I think that's Justin Timberlake. Hang on, this is my great grandfather. Father looks like Matthew McConaughey. My uncle Nick used to look exactly like Ryan Reynolds when he was a West Virginia coal miner in the 70s. My father-in-law looked like Andy Samberg 40 years ago. My grandfather looks like Johnny Depp. I mean, come on. This is like Johnny Depp for real. My grandmother, yeah, but see, my friend's grandmother looked like John Travolta in her youth. Well, no, you're not going to come back in. You're not going to, if you're a boy, you're not going to come back as a girl. If you're a girl, you're not going to come back as a boy. If you're a prophet, you're going to come back as a prophet, so on and so forth. So you're kind of subject to what you are. You can see Anne Frank was a good example. That is pretty much stamped on the reincarnation of Anne Frank without her knowing it. She stumbled into it. She's just blurting stuff out to her mum, this, that, and the other, and then you can see how she's still a female. My uncle used to look like John Travolta. See, again, with these, you'd have to go into their bloodlines, who they're related to. This is my girlfriend's 80-year-old grandfather used to look like Leonardo DiCaprio. See, again, great grandmother, Jimmy Kimmel, nah, just a lookalike. See, again, a lot of these could just be lookalikes. See, that could just be a lookalike. How many men you seen like that in your lifetime? So, but this one was obviously. I'll leave the link for this one in the description box because there's other different stories in here. Christian, Christian Haupt is an American born in 2008. He has been obsessed with baseball since he was a toddler, practicing constantly and insisting on wearing a baseball uniform as much as possible. In terms of skill, he is a child prodigy. According to Christian's mother, Kathy Bird, he told her while he was still a toddler that he remembered being a tall baseball player, that he'd played for the New York Yankees, and that Babe Ruth had been mean to him. Ruth and his fellow American baseball legend Lou Gehrig had a long-standing feud. Says Christian also described details about Major League Baseball in the 1920s and 30s, the era in the feud. Christian also described details about Major League Baseball in the 1920s and no, I read that bit. The era in which Gehrig played, they were accurate. Says Bird has published two versions of how she discerned that her son had been Gehrig. In a newspaper article in 2014, she quotes him as saying that he had played for the New York Yankees and his favorite position was first base. It's Gehrig's position. There's an added that she had shown him a picture of Gehrig and another man in her 2017 book about him and her own regression-based claim to have been Gehrig's mother. Bird writes that when shown a group picture of the team, Christian picked out Gehrig and said, "That's me." He says neither version contains the details found in the other. It says Tucker met Christian and his mother but declined to investigate it. Plans for making her look into a major motion picture seem to be at a standstill. So that's again, she's describing what her son's doing as a child, which is matching what this player Gehrig, all the things he went through. She mentioned regression. Where was it? It's in her 2017 book about him and her own regression-based claim. So apparently, she obviously went into regression is when someone hypnotizes you, and then they try to delve into your previous life. And I mean, I know what it is. I've never really watched any accounts of it. And again, when you watch someone, random person on TV talking about a previous life, what does it matter to you? It only matters if it's someone famous, because then you can actually recognize it and go, oh yeah, that sounds true. But apparently so regression, she took part in regression, which is hypnotizing This is base claim to have been the mother of that baseball player. Uh, yeah, Sherry Lee Laird is a Canadian rock singer who began claiming to be the reincarnation of Marilyn Monroe after a series of regression sessions with hypnotherapist Adrian Finkelstein. This is then recounted in a 2006 book by Finkelstein. Laird claims to have had a sense of, as a child, that she had lived before as a 1950s movie star. She had a mole above her left lip, and she wanted removed. And her aunt said it was just like the one on Marilyn Monroe had. So haunted by the notion she had been the ill-fated screen legend, she was tempted by suicide as a teen. But Finkelstein claims to have cured her and brought her out of more memories of Monroe's life. Says the case was well promoted by Finkelstein and widely reported in the media. Says treated with skepticism on the internet. Says Laird reacted with rage. On her current Facebook page, she calls herself Lady Cherie Leia. Promotes anti she promotes anti conspiracy theories and supports the claim of a man who says he is Jesus reincarnated. So she's just bugged out. But you see what? See, so again, I know. See, she's believing stuff, and she's had all this regression. I've been told by the spirit, this is who you are in the previous life, and I know that I was killed once or twice. So, what are you going to do about it? You're going to sit here and tripping out, looking around the corner every 5 minutes, driving really slow in my car just in case somebody hits me. You're not going to worry about it. Everything's in the hands of the Most High. Plus, we're living in a different time. Something's about to happen. The Most High is about to set the stage, and we're going to witness it. So, I doubt, Lord willing, I don't go anywhere because I believe I'm about to witness this great, spectacular day of the Lord, so on and so forth. So, yeah, I'm not going to go into it. I mean, I'll be here all night. Like I said, I'll leave this in. I'll leave the link for that in the description box. So you go into the. So when you go into you go into the East, and they you got all these different crazy religions, different gods, and so on and so forth. But when you actually look at a lot of their stories and a lot of the information, you realize it's actually come from the scriptures. There's many nations out there that have a flood story, and that's told of you in the Bible. In the Indians, so this is the Bhagavad Gita, which is what I believe Hindu people believe in. This is they believe in reincarnation. Yeah, I was just looking. So you got images like this. They'll have images like this. So these are supposed to be the angels and the chariots and so on and so forth. What they're trying to represent, that they're basically trying to tell you the same picture that we're trying to show you, but they'll use different names and they'll use all these different images, and then they mix their own stuff in there, and it becomes wrong. So, for example, in Hindu, they'll say, "Oh yeah, you're reincarnated as a cow." I mean, so where's the logic in that? And where's the Most High told you in the Bible, "I'll revisit your iniquity of the father upon the children in the third and fourth generation," as a cow or as a frog. Now, it doesn't say that. It just says, as in the children in the third or fourth generation. So I'm coming back as a human, and I'll get judged. I'm not going to come back as a cow and spend all day eating grass and shitting everywhere. But yeah, these again, you see, this is what it is you go to the East, they do kind of understand these things. See, a lot of the things you read about in the scriptures, the mindset, you read about the Jews, and you read about these groups of people, for example, that were always had a problem with another group of people, and so on and so forth, and it was all over the worship of who you believe in, and so on and so forth. This is kind of common practice in the East. It's not in the West. In the West, you're supposed to all get along. That if you support you want your religion, we'll support it, and we'll put up a church or a temple for you. You go back into the East, it has happened to a certain degree. You've got like, the golden cup of Babylon, which has made the whole world drunk. So at some point, for democracy and money, these countries have let people in. Like, for example, you go to places in China, they've let people from Muslim countries in to work and make money and add to the economy. But then eventually, when you get so many people there, they want to build a mosque. Too many mosques get built and people are complaining. And that's happening the same way it's happening in the West. It happens in these other places, but they're a lot more strict on it. You know, you you know, like for example, me growing up, you get told, you get told really, this is the type of people. Like, how can I describe it? You'll get told to marry within your own people. Um, I was offered an arranged marriage. So when I was young, I was told, if you want an arranged marriage, we can get you an arranged marriage. And I said, well, what does that involve? And I was told that, we'll get you CVs. They pull up CVs of women, picture of a woman and all her details. That she likes this, she likes that. And then you pick one out, you go and meet them. You meet the whole family turns up. So when you go on a date, you ain't at the back of the cinema getting your arm and your leg over. You're sitting for dinner and you got fucking 15 family members sitting behind you. See, that's where I came from. That's what's over in the East. Coming over to the West, it's a totally different thing. That whole philosophy is lost. Me growing up in the West, and then my mum trying to tell me that stuff, I'm looking at her like, what? What are you talking about? My people at school ain't doing that, so why am I going to do that? And then, that's how you lose your culture. This West is a dangerous place because it sucks up that goodness. I'm not trying to promote these other nations, but at least they got some sort of sense to a certain degree. Like they try to control who. I grew up in the 80s, and my granddad told my mum who to marry. That, yeah, what Westerners are doing that? But that's what you have back in the East. But the East, people from the East that you see over in the West now, they're gone. They lost it, and your people are part of that. You Israelites, all over, you know, the Western world with a Western mindset. It made me think of this song. It's quite an old song. It's 1986, West End Girls by the Pet Shop Boys. And when you look at the lyrics, it says here, sometimes, it says, you're better off dead. It says, there's a gun in your hand and it's pointing at your head. It says, you think you're mad, too unstable, kicking in chairs and knocking down tables in a restaurant in a West End town. This is call the police. There's a madman around, because that's you in this Western world, and you realize you're living in a fucking crazy world, but you've got this truth. So knowledge is wisdom. Wisdom is the stability of thy time. But all these other Israelites out here, they don't have this wisdom, and that's why they're out there in the world, kicking and screaming, fighting for whatever they're trying to fight for. Some of them, go to the level of they draw for the gun. Some of them just do all this wickedness. You've got all these false prophets doing 180-degree turns, like it's nothing. Turning on a sixpence, we call that in football. We call that turning on a sixpence. If you turned on a sixpence, you turn quick and sharp, because the sixpence is small. But that's what you get. That's what the Western world turns you into, and that's why they will end up saying, "Call the police. There's a madman around." So it's running down underground to a dive bar in the West End town, and so the chorus describes the sons of Israel. It says, in a West End town, a dead end world, the East End boys and the West End girls. In a West End town, a dead end world, the East End boys and the West End girls. So you coming back to this truth, this knowledge, and all these things that we're trying to show you through the scriptures, this kind of mindset, this understanding that you're supposed to pick up your true identity, your nationality, your heritage. It goes back to cultures that come out of the East, not from the West. And here you are, an East End boy and the West End girls. You're in the West End town, so you're in the West End town, a dead end world. America, Babylon the Great, the UK, this Western society. It says in the East End boys and the West End girls. And that's part of your problem. So you go out here, even your women, you know, Eve, you look at them, this Western society is perfect for them because you can do what you want and nobody can touch you, and you get all these this help and this government help, these benefits. Oh, you can't talk to her, she's a woman. You can't do that, she's a lady. You can't do that. Yet she can do this, that, and the other. You know, she can fleece you, she can take you to court, divorce you, take you for child support. But what can you? You can't do nothing back. So you know they given women these rights, these civil liberties, and so on and so forth, and it's destroyed the home. So if your home is destroyed, how are you going to keep the culture of your family? You see, when I grew up, my grandmother, she ain't done a fucking day's work in her life. And I mean, when I mean like by that, I mean by going out into the world to work. You know, my granddad had a shop at one point. He had an off license, so he had her working on the counter. But outside of that, she don't go to work. And one day I realized I was about 14, 15, and I was realized you don't. She's like, no, I don't go to work. I was like, raw. But I've grown up in the West. She's from the East, even though she's living over here. And she's like, nah, my husband goes to work. I sit at home and I do everything in the house. So then you got my mum and my dad. But then see, they broke up. So my mum says, oh, I have to go to work. I'm a single mum. But then the West, see, the Western society says, don't worry, we'll back you. You know, we'll give you child support, we'll give you this, we'll give you that, we'll give you everything, blah blah blah. So then she carries on that, and so now your family structure's broken. And then even myself now, even if I have a wife and I have a family, even if without knowing the truth, where's that old custom gone for my grandparents? You know, you remember certain things, but that's all gone, and that's how we forgot us. We forgot ourselves. We're Israelites. You're living in the West End town, and it's a fucking dead end world. So you got this. Yeah, but you could go to all these. Like I say, you can go into all these different books, these different cultures. They'll talk about reincarnation. They'll talk about this, that, and the other. I'm just trying to think what other things I saw would escape me. I had them in my head, but you know, there's certain things in other cultures that are truthful, and they've blatantly taken them from the scriptures, but then they've designed a whole religion which is with a false idol and false worship, and then it's just going off after that. Yeah, these see, when I was young, this used to come on TV. So this was so you had this. So this is like you get these, and this is like it looks like some sort of battlefield, and then some sort of angelic being the king, and people getting slewn, and then what it is, they made the TV program, didn't they? The cheesy, a bit like you get the Chinese cheesy Chinese kung fu movies, and they got the cheesy voiceovers, and it's a little bit like that. So then you got these dudes, this TV program, for example, that used to come on, and then all these actors, but what they're doing is they're playing the parts of these gods. And but what the gods are, see what they describe to you in their culture. Oh, these are gods, and we're going to pray to Vishnu, and we're going to pray to this dude. But when you actually go into it and look it up, knowing the truth, you realize what they're actually doing is talking about the powers. So they've seen angels, they've seen angelic beings, they've seen, I mean, Yahweh Shai visited, South America. You don't know, if where else he landed. But what it is, these people have seen things, and so then they've made drawings, like what do they call it? What do they call it when they just take the stone and they just carve it out or whatever? They've done all this kind of stuff. They've got these ancient legends of these stories, but along the way they add these names, they do this and they add this to it, and then they worship them. And really, it's just a bunch of angels. So we would go to the Bible, we read, oh, a few angels did this and they did that and they did that and they came down and they met this person and blah blah blah. And this is pretty much the same thing, but they've turned it into something and they've made idols out of them. That's pretty much the best way I can describe it. But yeah, this TV program used to come on, and so what it is, then you've got they made this TV show, and they're playing these gods with these superpowers. This is all goes back to the children of Israel, the sons of Israel. This is that's what we are. You know, we had that power in the time of Joshua. You know, so on and so forth. That's coming back, and then the whole world's going to fear us, and the Most High's going to put spiritual power in us, so that after the day of the Lord, when we put back on earth to put the nations in order, we're going to flex that spiritual power. They're going to realize, and they're going to line up quickly. Another way in which you go back, if you go into the east, you find out a little bit more about your own tradition. So you're a Hebrew Israelite, sons of the Most High. You're from the east, and you're coming back to the remembrance of who you are. So it's important to kind of realize that you're living in that Western society, Westernization, similar to Hellenization. You have to come out of that mindset. If you were to this is what I'm saying here is come from scholars, these Bible scholars. If you were to go to somewhere today on the earth to be in an environment that was similar to when Yahushua was here, don't forget Yahushua. You know, he's from if you like, the ghetto, the slums of that time. You've got Nazareth. Let me just look it up for you, just to confirm it. But I'm in the dark. I'm typing in the dark. Hang on. Is it a ghetto? I could have put a slum. It said yes, historical or modern contexts describe Nazareth as a type of ghetto or marginalized area. Biblically, it was poor, an insignificant Jewish village, considered a backwater. It says, can anything good come from Nazareth? Yep. It says, in contemporary Israel, it's the largest Palestinian city. Forget about contemporary Israel. So, so if you want to then try and imagine what that area was like when Yahushua was alive, what he was, where he was about, you'd have to go back to the Punjab. And don't forget, the Punjab is those people are Israelites, so they come from that culture. That's where the turban comes from. They hold the sword. Part of their religion, Sikh religion, is they hold on to the sword. Now, obviously, that's going back to the law of having your paddle and so on and so forth. So again, they got these little bits, but then they mix it and it's all changed. It's all mixed up. But when you go back to the Punjab, you then go to the villages. I've been there myself. You'll have like the streets are pretty much sand. I had a picture a minute ago. So yeah, so this is you go into the villages basically of the Punjab, and then this is your street level view, if you like. So you will walk through streets like this for a while, and then you'll come to one big tarmacked road, and then that road will take you to through the different towns or whatever. But I was there when I was about 10 years old. I think there's another one. Yeah, so stuff like this. This is pretty much what you're walking around, places like this. But then the houses that were in the time of Yahushua are a bit like what you hear when you get the description of Rahab's house. So she had to hide the two spies on the rooftop. This is something like this. What they call them is kotis. That's the modern name for that's what the Punjabi people call them, kotis. It says kothi, but it's koti. But then this is the thing. You see again, like this is a slightly grander one. They've kind of like decorated it up a little bit. You'll have four walls basically to the house. So you've got one wall, second wall here, third wall, and then a wall behind you. And in the middle, you have open space like a, you can see the stars. But again, see, Western culture has gone and infiltrated it. And so you've got people like this, they've done stuff like this now. So this is a Punjabi and whatever, Kothian. And that's like a modern version. So even that's just starting to disappear. But when you speak to scholars, I mean, when you look up their opinions and so on and so forth, they'll say, if you want to go somewhere on Earth today, and then you want to walk around in an area which is similar to how it was when Yahushua was alive, obviously they'll probably call him Jesus, then they'll tell you to go to the Punjab, and that's where you'll see these types of buildings and that type of villagey, the floors like that, the buildings are like that. Um, just having a look around to see what else. Let me go back to this one. Yeah, so the inside might be like this, and then you'll have a staircase going up to the rooftop. You can go inside, and there's rooms inside there. You can go upstairs. You can see like the mezzanine there. They can look down, but you can go into rooms there, and then they'll have the rooftop. So that's why obviously there's, for in Rahab's situation, they had to check the rooftop. But there was I came across a few others, because you see again now they like make them all fancy, and it's like even this this is like a westernized little triangle. This is Babylon the Great getting its influence, and then these people try and turn their house into like mini White Houses and mini mansions or whatever. But there was a couple of basic ones I found earlier. I mean, again, this is like I've gone through this picture already, but this is like you got to imagine it from the outside. So when I was in Punjab, basically the house that we were in is like this. The front walls like that, but then the side walls like that, the other side walls like that, the rear walls like that. So you can go into each side, and then there's rooms in them. People will sleep down there, and then like I say, you had the second level with a mez. This one doesn't have it. Then you can go onto the roof, and that will go all the way around. I suppose this is probably. Let me go backwards. Yeah, this one, this type of thing. Like I say, that's on the inside. There's another one there, but you're only really seeing. See, that's still quite grand. You obviously in the village, they're very basic. But yeah, like I say, that's like that Eastern culture. So they're still living out there like that, the same way they did 2,000 years ago. Obviously, India is classed as a third world country, so it's what you want to call backwards. But going forwards, you're in the West. So how much better is that? Yeah, you've got insulation on your house and you've got a roof tile, but you've got a whole lot of other problems. So yeah, I just wanted to go into that, bring that out as well. Um, like I say, going back to the east, even in the hang on, let me. Even when you look at the clothing, and then you look at these types of things, but then again, this is all traditional, so they sort of actually, you know what? Let me try this. So this is a more ancient, like a sari. So this is the kind of thing you would have got in ancient times. They deck themselves out with gold, and they'll again. This is cut and fitted. A proper sari is one piece of material that's wrapped and wrapped and wrapped around, and then it ends up coming over the top of the end. So it's one complete piece, and they wear the blouse. But even in an ancient one, they wouldn't even have the blouse because they'd have a way of wrapping it up. See, everything's diluted now, everything's gone, but it is still within that culture. So you think of ancient Hebrew Israelite women. Even I was thinking about this earlier. You go in the West, you go to a strip club, you see some skinny blonde bird, called Snowflake. But then you go to the East, and they'll give you a belly dancer. But the belly dancer's got a belly, so she's not, 6 stones and eating carrots all day. Um, so you've got them weighty women, but again, this is the kind of thing. So this is your difference between your. It's no different from what's going on in the West. You go to a strip club, you go see a belly dancer in the East, but then there's different ways of doing it. But again, like I say, it's just comparing the different. With me, I look at the contrast between the two, the East and the West. It's almost like that's what the Most High is making us see. You living under these Edomites, everything's backwards, the wrong way round. You've gone to the opposite ends of the earth. You're to the one of all things. You go to these Edomites, and look where it's got you. Your people are destroyed through lack of knowledge, so on and so forth. They don't call on the Most High. They worship all these pagans, and they've lost their tradition. So, you compare this to the women now, our women. What they're doing now, they got all like fake wigs on, they got the fake eyelashes, they're all 304s, they're wearing his hot pants. There's no class, no style, no nothing. There's no like etiquette. Any type of word you want to add in that type of manner, they just don't have it. That's how our people destroy through lack of knowledge. Living like a Westerner. But it says, but the words of the wise are as goads. Ecclesiastes 12 and 11. It says, the words of the wise are as goads. And it says, and as nails fastened by the masters of assemblies, which are given from one shepherd. So a goad is a sharp pointed stick used to prod animals like oxen, to move them, or figuratively, it is anything that indicates or urges someone to action, like persistent nagging or a stimulus. So the words of the wise. I should really start at verse 9. It says, moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge. Yea, he gave good heed. It says, and sought out and said it in order many proverbs. It says, the preacher sought to find out acceptable words, and that which was written was upright, even words of truth. It says, the words of the wise are as goads, so they're prods, that are prodding you in the right direction. It says, as nails fastened by the masters of assemblies. When you ever come across an object and you go, wow, whoever put this, you come across a Rolls Royce, and you know that the people that put this together are masters of assemblies. They didn't just get any old, gas monkey from down the road, grease monkey, mechanic, to put this car together. They used a master of assembly to assemble this car. Well, it's the same thing with the words of the wise, as nails fastened by the masters of assemblies. It says, which are given from one shepherd, Yahushai. It says, and further by these, my son, be admonished. It says, of making many books, there is no end. It says, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. So, you can go into all these books of all these different nations, go around the world and pull up all these different philosophies, how to connect with your chakra and your energy source and your feng shui and, and all sorts of your karma. You got people out there, oh, don't walk on a cracked paving stone because it's bad luck. So, people are living by these philosophies and it's all madness. It says, and further by these, my son, says, be admonished. It says, forget about it. The making of many books, there is no end. You can go spend all day into these books. It says, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. You only need one book, and that book is the Bible. But Not only do you need the book, you need the key to the book, which is the prophet of Yahweh Shai, Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai. It says, and let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. It says, fear the Most High and keep His commandments. It says, all this is the whole duty of man. It says, for the Most High shall bring every work into judgment, and every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. So, we're telling you these things, and if you don't believe, at some point you're going to find out that it's real. And this is Amos 3 and 6. I'll leave you with this. It says, shall a trumpet be blown in the city, and the people not be afraid? It says, shall there be evil in a city, and Yahweh have not done it? It says, surely the Most High, Yahweh, says, will do nothing, but He revealeth His secrets unto the servants, the prophets. It says, the lion hath roared, and who will not fear? It says, the Most High, Yahweh, have spoken, who can but prophesy? So I'm going to leave it right there. I hope that was edifying. Just to recap, reincarnation is a biblical concept. Every third or fourth generation through your father's bloodline, you're going to be reborn. And chances are you're going to have the same characteristics, the same personality, the same behavioral traits as you did in a previous life. And this whole business of, people, they say, oh, my great granddad from 50 years ago is watching over me. Well, no, he's probably back on the earth and living his life. So if you don't have that, knowledge, that wisdom, then you can't work it out. You go back to Ecclesiastes 12 and 11. It says, the words of the wise are as goads, prodding you in the right direction, trying to give you the information, trying to push you into the right mindset. So I hope that's edifying. I'm going to leave it right there. Until next time, all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakak, Wadash. Until next time, Shalom.